My name is Mark Stephen. I'm going to be chairing today's event. Welcome to our 9th annual Digital Transformation Summit. Before I actually get started, I need to run you through some sort of housekeeping rules. Please turn any mobile phones or electronic devices to silent. Toilets, you've passed them already on level 2, just the floor above. There's no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if there is a loud noise, it is for real. Please just get out. The assembly point is on Holyrood Gate. All catering today will take place in the Stratosphere upstairs. That's basically where you did registration and what have you. And if you are using the car park downstairs, you can get a reduced rate of £6, this is worth knowing, by visiting the conference registration desk. Okay? And that's about probably the most sensible things I will say so far. However, I'm going to hand you now across to the organiser of today's event, Mr. Ray Bugg, who wishes to extend his own welcome. So, Ray.
Morning, everyone. Always a brief hello and introduction from myself before I hand you over to the far more interesting people. Just to thank you for coming today. 9 years. One of our biggest events. It's 9 years ago we were very focused on the technology. Now I think the narrative of this event is very much focused on people, process and culture, and then you decide what you underpin in terms of technology on top of it. I'm just repeating what I said last night at the dinner. My job here this morning, very quickly, is to thank those organisations that make these events possible. Our mandate at Digit is to make sure that all of our events are free to attend for the end user community. They always have been since we started back in March 2014 with our first event up in Aberdeen. And here we are 10 years later, still following that rule. And we aim to keep that in place for as long as we're around. So it's always free to attend for the end user. That wouldn't be possible without the help of our sponsors. And a quick thank you to our headline sponsors, Dell Technologies in partnership with Intel, and you'll be hearing from Stephen very shortly, 2i Testing, Forit, TCS, Scottish Widows, LapSafe, Vertec, and Border Crossing UX. Without the help of these people, this simply doesn't happen. They underpin it all. So please give them a couple of minutes of your time over the day. They are luring you in with goodies. Great products and services. I know that Border Crossing have bought 300 pot plants today. So if you fancy a pot plant, go and nick one of those. And other great swag on the stands. And in addition to that, normally you do find 3 or 4 of your exhibitors are raffling a prize. Today we only have one. And that is Forit. They have technical Lego. There's a Porsche. Now that, it's a couple of £100 worth from what I can see. And that will be raffled at the drinks reception. So just get your badge scanned to enter. They will draw that during the drinks reception, and one of you will walk away with that as either an early Christmas present to yourself or something for somebody else. And I've heard that IT folk do like a bit of Lego, so I'm sure that's going to be a popular prize. Last thing before I hand back over to Mark is what we've got coming. 23rd of November at the EICC is Digit Expo. If you imagine this event times 8 in size, 1,500 people, it covers all areas of technology. Everything is discussed over the course of that day. 5 stages, walk in, walk out to all the different talks that you want to, 50 exhibitors. It's a marvellous day out. Please do come along. Again, free to attend, and do pass on to your colleagues that might be interested in attending as well. That's on the 23rd of November. For those of you that are interested in the managed services, the service and support side of IT, ITSX is back for its 2nd year in February, on the 29th of February. So we will see a lot of the ladies going down on one knee, I'm sure, on that day, because I think that's the only day that ladies are allowed to propose, if you're politically incorrect and believe all that old stuff. And then in March, we've got Scott Secure back. Scott Secure is back for its 10th annual outing. One of our biggest and best events again. Massive topic, cybersecurity. That's on the 27th of March. We're telling you about these events now so you can book now. As you'll know, our events do fill up very, very quickly. They tend to be, most of them now, at capacity and often go into a waiting list format as well, so early booking is advised. Back over to Mark. Have a great day. My staff are on hand to help you if you require it, and thanks again for taking a day out to join us.
Thanks, Ray. I live in rural Aberdeenshire, and as you know, Aberdonians are renowned for their resolute cheerfulness. basically, an Aberdonian's just a Yorkshireman with all the joy squeezed out. But I was talking to one of my neighbours the other day, and he came up with a lovely expression. He said, you know, the problem is, I'm not putting this in Doric because you wouldn't understand it. He says, the problem is we live in a world where everything is getting more expensive and nothing is getting better. Let's think about that for a moment. Because if you can use digital technology, if you can transform your company using digital technology to make those two statements untrue, the chances are your customers will love you for it. But how do you do that? Well, our first speaker today is Conor Boyle, Principal Data Architect for Aegon. And invariably I ask the speakers, don't give me the title of your talk, but what are you going to be talking about? You know, in a different sentence, so that I have something to say to get them on. The trouble is, with this one, neither of us could think of a better alternative to the title he's already got, which is Empathetic Architecture. If you can, come and talk to us later. But ladies and gentlemen, Conor Boyle.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today. Can everyone hear me okay? Excellent. Yeah, so the subject of this talk is going to be empathetic architecture, which I'm going to take you through over the next 20 minutes. Now, empathetic architecture is something that I actually worked on with a old colleague and friend of mine named Liz Dennett, and Liz is actually in the audience with us today. Conveniently for me, Liz is actually in the front row. So perhaps if there's any difficult questions, I'll be able to do a slopey shoulder in the Q&A and pass over to Liz. So, as part of digital transformation, we're looking to deliver more and more future-facing business capabilities, whilst also retaining the processes that run the organisation today. And we have to merge the new with the old, and this is hard. I think it's difficult. So, empathetic architecture is one way of making this process of digital transformation a little bit easier. So, a little bit about me. I'm a principal data architect currently working in the asset management sector. My current employer is Aegon Asset Management, and their purpose is to help people to live their best lives. In my role, I lead the solving of complex data problems, collaborating with highly technical and highly commercial focused teams. So, my passions, or some of my passions that will hopefully shine through this presentation today, are data, architecture, and sustainability. Sustainability is a big one. It's a big word, and it often evokes visions of carbon emissions or raw materials. But the context for my sustainability is in changing organisations sustainably, developing sustainable architectures that can transition through time, and some things as simple as not hitting reply all on that email chain. That email is going to get stored for a while, and whilst it's not paper-based, it does take up some level of resources. Next up, I have a disclaimer. It's a huge disclaimer. I think if I was going to get the word disclaimer up there any bigger, it would be off the slide. But it says that all content in this presentation is a representation of myself and not my current or any previous employer. So very important to have that disclaimer out the way at the beginning of this. And then onto the agenda. So today we're going to do a bit of the what, a bit of the why, some where, and some how. So we're going to look at what is empathetic architecture, where I'm going to give you a definition. Then we're going to look at why we need empathetic architecture, and then we're going to look at where else is there empathetic architecture, where can we borrow, where have I saw this idea, where have I perhaps stolen it from or borrowed it from, and then we're going to do a little exercise in how to empathetically architect. So what is empathetic architecture? I'm sure you've saw the word empathy or empathetic, and I'm sure you've saw the word architecture, but you may not necessarily have saw them put together. Well, empathy is the ability to understand others' feelings. And empathetic architecture is the ability to understand how the organisation looks today and what can be repurposed now to work in harmony with what is architected for the future state. It means integrating long-standing systems with recent technologies with minimal tension and disruption. And I have this statement at the bottom here, which says that for too long as technologists, we've designed a future state which is based off the newest or most interesting technologies without considering what we have today, without considering the existing estate. Organisations are gritty, and this is one issue during digital transformation that we need to tackle. So we've covered a little bit about I've given a definition of what empathetic architecture is, and now we're going to look at why we need it. So we've got this question on here. Well, there's two questions. The first one is, how many organisations are struggling with digital transformation? I'll change that question actually, raise your hand if you've actually had a struggle with digital transformation or experienced that at some point. I'll raise mine. Okay, so we've got a lot of hands there. So the answer is loads, to be succinct and colloquial. But the longer answer to this is that, based off some research by McKinsey, is that only a third of organisations that have launched some flavour of digital transformation have realised their expected revenue benefits. And so this is something, to put in politely and in a word, challenging. And the second question on here, I guess I have three now, but the third one, sorry, is why. Why are we finding this a challenge? And that's what we're going to cover in this section. There is palpable tension at the heart of organisations. The core organisation's activities haven't necessarily changed, but the operating environment around it has. Organisations have to overcome the inertia and cost of legacy systems whilst becoming nimble and adapting the latest and greatest technologies. At the same time, organisations have this backdrop. They have a history of mergers, of acquisitions, countless reorgs, changes to their strategy, and product changes. And all of this leads to a jumbled architectural landscape, and it's something that we really do need to understand in order to move forward. Having covered off some of the organisational tension as part of the reason why we need, why digital transformation is hard and the need for empathetic architecture, I wanted to present some of my reflections on this. And naturally, these reflections come from an architectural standpoint, and these are also only some of my thoughts. But the first point on here is technology over value. So we aren't always answering the question during digital transformation of how are we making things better. And often we let the tech talk dominate too much of the conversation. We're not being empathetic to the capabilities that we have today and understanding what we really need. So an example of this, perhaps you've seen it before, is finding the latest technology or way of thinking, the analytics graph, fabric hub, mesh, whatever it's called. And you say, right, what are you going to do with it? You say, yeah, I'm going to generate the quarterly reports. Like, well, can I already have the quarterly reports? Where's the actual benefit in here from moving to this different technology? The next point on here is that information technology is playing catch-up. It's still maturing as a profession. And if you consider things like mathematical theory that span millennia that we use today, and we compare that to how long we've been applying information technology in organizations, there's a huge difference here. So we need to borrow ideas from other disciplines to mature. And the third point on here, which is a very important point, is Conway's Law. And it states that organizations who design systems are constrained to product designs that are copies of their organization structure. So if you have 5 product solution teams, expect to get 5 product solutions in return. So we need to focus on organizational design for success. And I have this image here. I'd use a pointer, but I forgot how to work it, which has got a single team on the left, and they're working together to deliver a set of capabilities, and that's resulted in what's on the right, which is this centralized architecture, meaning it's probably a little bit more difficult to change through time due to the coupling, the cohesion, how tightly things are together. And then underneath that, we've got a bunch of small independent teams, and they've been working together to deliver a set of capabilities, and that's resulted in something that's much more distributed. But perhaps that needs some more controls and governance around it. What happens when we do the opposite? It leads us into an anti-pattern. So if you can imagine these arrows going like that. And this is where we implement technology changes that don't reflect the organization. And this is when we get into a more difficult environment to operate in. A further point to the organizational design and the human impact here is on role specialization. So one person today isn't a developer. They generally have a specialization. So that might be in data engineering, or it might be in machine learning. And even my role, at the beginning, I said my role is not architect, it's data architect. Even I've got this specialism. And I think it's a great thing, but I don't always think we've considered the softer aspects of this. So previously, where one person would perform the business process end to end, now they're focused specifically on one part of that process. Yet the technology landscape isn't being designed to complement this. Again, we're not recognizing these changes and designing for them and considering the impacts. We aren't being empathetic. My next point on here concerns architectural and system persistence. So in software, we believe that architecting software architecture isn't like architecting a bridge over a river or a building, because software architecture can be easily torn down, right? However, this is the point. How many organizations have software architectures today that are older than the building they currently reside in? In truth, system architectures persist through time. And my last point on here is that organizations have a story. Most organizations are not a blank canvas, and we're grappling between the past, the current, and the future state as part of our digital transformations. We're absolutely excellent at designing the future as a silo, but we really do need to consider the present and the past. So we've covered what is empathetic architecture at this point, my definition from a software side, why we need it. In this section, we're going to cover where else can we find this way of thinking. So I've got this question on here which says, if we need to architect against this backdrop, Are there any other disciplines using empathetic architecture that we can borrow ideas from? Well, the discipline of the built environment handles buildings with varying requirements and contexts. Empathic or empathetic architecture is something that already exists in this discipline. To architect a physical building, you have to consider the context around it and also within it. Is the building in a conservation area might be one question that you ask. Or what materials are needed? What will the building be used for? What are the costs of such an approach? And we can apply this in our thinking and architecting software systems too. So what components do we need? What use cases will we meet? And so on. So my point here is that there are things we can learn when architecting our software from borrowing from this thinking. Up here I have this image, which I think is a fine example of the employment of empathetic architecture. So this building is actually the Opera House in Hamburg in Germany. And what was previously a warehouse on the left has been totally transformed. And the use of the building has changed too, but it works, right? So what was previously used for the storage of goods is now used for rehearsal halls. It's also used for storage, and it's also used for parking. But above this, there's been a performing arts and a public space that's been created. And I have this note on the right, down in the bottom right quadrant of the screen, that says sometimes what you don't notice is as important as what you do notice. For me, when I actually saw this building, I didn't realize that it was a warehouse previously. I just thought, oh, that's the way that they designed it. But then I think to myself, did the designers of this building ever envisage this warehouse being transformed to this? And I think that's very unlikely. And in parallel, if we consider our digital transformations, did we consider the trajectory that we're on today when the organisation first started? In parallel to that example there, I think that's very unlikely. And so I want to move on to some slides and points on the similarities between empathetic architecture in the built environment and empathetic architecture in software. So our first similarity that we have here is that design is entwined with context, the past and the future. So we had that example in the built environment. I want to give another one that's going to run in parallel. So if you imagine a data and analytics platform that was once the forefront of technical capabilities, it's perhaps using a code base that's superseded or uses standards that have been superseded, such a platform is highly likely to be fulfilling the needs of new products it was not originally designed for. So the technical and commercial environment of the organisation has moved on. And this is similar to that warehouse to opera house example. The similarity here is that things that exist can be repurposed or extended. My next point on here is that design to be successful is considerate. So in the built environment, empathetic architecture considers how does someone feel when they're physically within a building and how will they move around it? What function does the building serve? Does it handle the volume of people within it for the intended purpose? And with software architecture, as we're finding out, we have to consider how a user feels. Does the software provide the right functions to satisfy the right purpose? How well do you really know your requirements? How well do you really know your requirements? And also, are you considering Conway's Law that I spoke about earlier? Another similarity here is design for sustainability. So much as buildings endure changes to external factors, so must software in organizations. So consider the volume and traffic, perhaps going for a tunnel or going over a bridge versus the volume of traffic hitting your application. We want to be able to scale. It's a similarity, perhaps it's a difference at the same time. The next one in here is on change through time, is another similarity. So if you consider how buildings evolve through time with their use cases, consider your organizations. And a secondary point to this is about interim architectures. So in software, we require interim architectures through time to get us to the eventual target. But could a building's architecture be considered interim if it's going to be extended at a later date? We just don't know that that's going to happen yet. I think so, and I think we can draw on this similarity with software architecture. So at this point, we've covered the definition of empathetic architecture, why we need it, where this concept has been borrowed from, and now I want to do a short exercise on how to empathetically architect. So here we've got a set of organisational capabilities. We've got product A, we've got product B, and we've got product C. And data has been put to the bottom left-hand side here, and it looks like data can only be accessed via central services. And we've also got some personas. It also looks like these products, they've got some communication directly between them. So there's not much to this diagram on the face of it, but there are a bunch of implicit assumptions in here that are abstracted for our presentation today. But even saying that, really there's not. But even within the small set of capabilities on this diagram, we've got relationships, we've got split capabilities, we've got things that are centralized, we've got boundaries, communications, and several use cases to cater for. The truth is that the previous diagram maybe had a few hidden capabilities underneath. There's the old Excel popping up, an Excel supporting product A and product C. Maybe this sounds familiar. So my point here isn't about getting into using Excel or not using Excel, but it's about calling out some things that we may miss. So Excel is doing a job for product A and C here, and it would be really easy to just ignore it. But then if you do that, this problem isn't really going away, right? So we've had that organisation architecture that we presented. Now that's on the left of the screen. And so if we consider the acquisition of a set of capabilities from a competitor, perhaps, that's now on the right, and their setup is a little bit like this. So we've got no central services. The data is not split out. It's actually embedded within the product capabilities. It's directly hooked in. There's also no Excel, but I don't know. That might be the official diagram, not the unofficial one. So to move forward, we've got two questions to ask. And the first one is, what are the incompatibilities between the current and target architecture? So I think the incompatibilities are fairly clear here, and a choice has got to be made about the organisation's future state. Is it important that data is coupled to the product or not? Does the organisation want or need a set of central services, or is everything going to be strictly domain-based? And does the organisation want to distribute its people in this manner also? We could also consider what's our appetite for using Excel, what the use cases, and are we cool with that, or maybe we're not. And the second question is, how can these incompatibilities be resolved? So in resolving these incompatibilities, we would formulate a plan for moving forward in a way that's going to deliver the maximum impact with the least amount of friction. And the important thing here, like empathetic architecture, is the understanding that's holistic and it includes that context. We might well end up with some interim architectures that will take us into something a little bit like this. So let's say that the organisation's communication structures lend themselves to indeed having central services and a data set of capabilities, but some of the central services were to be embedded closer to the product teams as part of the communication, so those purple boxes, in between. So this is a little bit similar to the organisation that doesn't have them. In addition, perhaps the organisation stated that product A and B were close enough to be merged, but there were major differences between the product Cs that they had, so one of them's become product D. And the organisations felt or aimed to say that data would sit outside of products and it was moved to the side. And the Excel problem, we'll have to come back to that one, is changed into a capability that's a suite of common services, a bit like Excel, but that's been distributed as a capability. So it's been central and then it's got central services, but it actually exists within these product domains. And then, of course, we have our important people on the left side of this diagram that have to be considered. So for this approach, we've got some things that are common across the organisation and shared, and we've got some things that are not. So there has to be a real balance here of what's enterprise or central level versus what's domain or product level. And again, this is only true if the all-important context has really been considered, and there are further implications and details we could go into this today, but unfortunately, we're time bound on this presentation, but some empathetic architecture has been applied. So I now want to move on to my closing remarks. So when moving forward and making decisions, it is possible to have the tools, technologies, and architectural patterns that work now and move forwards with technological advancements and digital transformation. Fundamentally, empathetic architecture will transition the organisation through time and ultimately make the whole greater than the sum of its parts. To move forward, we all just need a bit of empathy. Thank you.
There will be a chance to ask questions of any of the three panellists after they've all spoken, and you can either do that by sticking your hand up, or there is Slido as well. I'll talk to you about that shortly. Our next speaker is Nana Fifield, VP Product and Engineering for Pricemoov, who wants to talk about technology teams as potential catalysts for change. So, Nana.
Hi everyone, it's really great to be here and lovely to see you all. As you heard, I'm VP of Product and Engineering for a company called Pricemoov. So we basically help customers to calculate near real-time price recommendations for their products. So I'm going to really touch in terms of how technology teams can really be a catalyst for change for organizations, and in this regard, thinking about growth and acceleration of growth. So a couple of years ago, I wrote a book called Beyond Digital Transformation, and it's really thinking about the era we're in now, which is the time of digital transformation, and looking beyond that. So how does the technology industry move to the next level? And it is available in all good stores, including Amazon. So feel free to go there. So I really wanted to, let me just move on to this one, look at how particularly technology can help to the lessons that we've learned from the past, thinking about more mature industries and how they've been able to answer the questions that technology industries are still asking today. So I'm going to dive into that particular topic, but I wanted to share with you a story. Sorry, just let me get here. A story of my own experience when I was slightly earlier on in my career, where I joined a company, and it's a company that provided services for the educational industry across the United Kingdom. And at that time, there was an all-hands, and the CEO of the company said to us, look, we're facing real challenges with new customers entering the market. Our performance as a business is not where we should be, and our customers have a perception of us, and you need to hear that from the customers. So he invited 2 key customers to our all-hands to share their experience of us as a company. And they told us some really critical information that was pivotal to the way and the direction the company went in. And one of those was, you don't listen to us. We have real challenges, and you don't listen and you don't understand. You're providing solutions for us that we don't actually need because they won't help us to be successful. And frankly, we find you quite arrogant. Now, that's a hard lesson to take. And the CEO said, from this point on, we are transforming, and we're going to put customers at the heart of every decision we make. And that was in the early 1990s, right? I've been in the technology industry for 30 years. So I came away from sitting behind my computer screen, coding away, to getting out in my car with a huge whiteboard. Obviously, iPads didn't exist then. And driving to customers, schools and colleges right across the southeast of England, and meeting these IT managers, meeting schools and colleges, listening to them, understanding their problems, capturing all of this information, and also capturing some of the solutions, and going back with the rest of my colleagues to the office and unraveling all that information. And what happened was a transformation. So throughout the way we thought about a roadmap, the products we needed to solve, to produce, the problems we needed to solve, we started to derive solutions, and we brought our customers into the earliest possible stage of delivery, giving them early feedback and being able to help, asking them to help us to test the products and share with us how their experience had evolved. And through that, we're able to navigate the direction of the products and to deliver solutions they wanted. Now, the first time I went to visit them, there was frustration. There was a kind of a hostility. They didn't really want to engage. After that, going back to visit them after we delivered products, that changed. We built relationships, and we saw that we were able to expand our offerings. So that was a really successful engagement. But what did that teach us? It taught us, frankly, that customers are critical to the success of a business. We know that. And that at the center of the organization, we need to put our customers first. We need to drive decisions with customers and know our customers. But this is about not just the commercial side of the business, it's everyone within the business, including technology teams. And we needed to build with empathy. So thinking about the psychology of having your customers in your mind when you're building digital products is really critical. So these were the lessons we learned. Now I want to go back, way back to the 1900s, the first industrial revolution, when manufacturers were thinking about building cars and products. And they were thinking about how to build customer loyalty, how to grow their markets, how to reach out to new customers when competition started to become really tough in the car industry. In a nutshell, they also learned those lessons all the way back then. And some of those lessons were about how to attract customers but keep them loyal, and also how to look at things like the processes that they use to build products. Waste was a big part of a process that they needed to eliminate. Simplifying things and making sure that they were able to deliver with quality and manage their costs. And that they put their people, their employees, at the heart of actually unraveling the problems that they saw during production, and also they partnered with their suppliers. So in essence, they were solving the problems that my company was solving in the 1990s. So out of this came some real lessons about how back then the problems that we're looking at today were solved, but they were applicable in a different industry. And we know that the manufacturing industry has gone from reinventing itself, now today applying digital technologies to their products. Cars are doing that. They've matured, they've standardized their processes. The tech industry is a relatively immature industry. We are building a lot of things, we're doing a lot of things, but our ability to be able to standardize those same lessons that the other industries have done is not there yet. So in essence, these are the same lessons from the past. It was exactly the same: remove silos, value to customers, efficiency improvements, and so on. So we know that companies need to grow. We know that already all the solutions are there today. We have Six Sigma, Lean, Agile is not a new thing, but we are rewording the same concepts over and over again. And I think this is a point where we really need to kind of see that the industry needs to move forwards. So coming back to present-day technology, let's stop reinventing the wheel. Let's adapt those processes that already exist and the methodologies, knowing that we need to think about customer retention, and there's many ways that we can do that today. And companies need to grow, so acquisition of new customers is important. We are in a place today where competition is so rife. There are so many different variables changing constantly. So it's important that companies can know the means of how they can keep their existing customers while being able to get ahead of the competition and attract new customers, but also being able to be entrants into new markets and potentially innovate and create their own markets, as AI has done today. And I wanted to just pause here and just look at technology and science. So science, as we know, is a systematic knowledge of the physical world that's gained through experimentation and observation. And engineering is the process of designing and creating machines, tools, and systems. Technology is the equation of science and engineering. In essence, it involves the techniques, skills, methods, and processes to produce goods and services. So you're probably wondering why I'm saying this. The role and purpose of technology teams today is to use the techniques, the skills, the processes, and methods that are used to produce digital products, essentially. And they have to be positioned to be able to act quickly when dynamics change. And right now, there are lots of dynamics changing in the markets, in the industries. An example is a retail business, a B2B business. Historically, costs have changed. They've been reasonably stable, but few changes. Today, we're seeing with our customers constant cost changes due to inflation, due to dynamics in the industry, due to different competitors. So they have to be able to adapt very, very quickly to those costs to reprice their own products to stay competitive. And they have to have a clear view of what their competitors are doing. Now, that means that a company that offers products to these existing customers have to be able to navigate those changes to support their customers to grow. They need to also anticipate what's happening in the market so that they can adapt their own solutions to keep current with the offering that they give to their own customers. And so the technology teams are building those products. And if they are far removed from the customer face, the commercial face of the business, they're going to act slowly. Productivity isn't where it needs to be. So building the right products and the right solutions is critical. And it requires that the technology teams are very much ready to be able to change. And there is a perception today of what technology teams are like. I'm sure you've heard some of those. That, they don't need to be involved with the rest of the business. Keep them in the back. They should be coding. The more code, the better, the more productive they are. Okay? So that's that bit. They are kind of replaceable, and they work with product managers. So they're very, very much to the side of the business. And this is the model that you will see. The teams are far away from the rest of the business. And there are all the other functions working, collecting the intelligence, and dictating to the technology teams what they need to build. The problem with this is that you need to deliver value, and the value has to be understood. And teams that are delivering value should understand the challenges and the problems that the customers have. The earlier you do, the less likely that you are going to implement and produce the wrong value. And wrong value is waste. So what the teams get today are the what and the how, and what they should also have is the who and the why. That's really important. So in essence, this is where engineering teams and technology teams need to be moving forwards. They need to understand value. It can be misrepresented in this model, and there are lots of other bits of information that you don't get in a requirements document. So let's turn that around and think about delivering impact. And this is a different perspective. So we've talked about delivering quickly, have a broader impact, maintain high competitiveness in an ever-changing environment. They need to be set up to be able to adapt and be responsive, and they need to know what value is. But they don't need someone to be constantly relaying that and interpreting that for them. So in order for technology teams to be able to support a business to rapidly innovate, to understand what value they can achieve through innovation, and to create impact, and as opposed to outputs. So impact is value that you continue to derive for a long term, whereas output is chuck anything out there, but we don't really know whether it hits the mark. It's really important that you eliminate silos in your organization, so you bring everyone closer together. And the other thing is with technology teams is that the company has overarching goals that they want to achieve. And most of the time, these teams don't really know how to translate those high-level business goals into something tangible that they can deliver time and time again. Bringing them closer together helps them to understand how it impacts the work they do. So just giving you a view of how they work today. There is the element of discovery. So really getting involved in design and delivery requires them to know the bigger picture. The discovery element is important. They should be engaged in coming up with the ideation process as well. And in essence, thinking about all of these goals, how do I contribute to customer retention? What are the targets that I should be working towards? How do we contribute to, growing our market, bringing in more customers, attracting more customers? How do we make sure our products are able to do that? And in another sphere, they are transferring knowledge right across the business to customer services, to the consultants that go out and implement solutions, and to the sales teams that are going to work on demos and things like that, are talking to prospects. So they're central to that element of distribution of knowledge across the business. And as well as that, thinking about architecture, thinking about how you drive quality, what does quality mean to one customer versus the other. It's important that they're able to understand that level. And then they do all of this before they even touch the code. If an engineer is touching code before they understand value, they're already going the wrong direction. And then finally, they're managing the operational side. So there is a whole raft of effort that they can contribute to build value. So this is the model that we should be thinking about. A central model, think of it as mini business units. So surround yourselves or create an organization where you have units, or perhaps you call it domains, areas of domains, which involve people from the business, technology, product, and surrounding themselves around customers. And in that way, everyone is engaged, start to finish, in understanding the domain, what's required, the targets that they need to achieve, what are the best, most impactful solutions that they can prioritize and deliver early. And don't forget experimentation. Embedding that process in allowing your customers access to your solutions, experimenting and being able to fail fast is really critical to make sure that you're navigating the costs that you are building and investing in your business in the right direction. And one other thing is technology teams are usually seen as a cost to business. I see them more as an asset because they have economic value, and that's the way we can think about that too. So finally, just coming to the playbook of how can you start to bring those teams into the business, really think about, start with engaging them in a whole bunch of different sessions. People get a bit nervous when I say this because they think, oh, but they're a bunch of geeks, right? They don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to work with customers. They don't know how to, they'll go off in the wrong direction. They'll catch an idea and they'll go with it. That's not true. As you get them to work with the rest of the business and set real goals and objectives for them to work towards, you will see that they now start to think commercially, and that commercial mindset is critical for everyone to be on the same page. So involving them in all of these activities is pretty important. And finally, I would say the how, get them involved in the how so that they can start to align on the work that they need to do, and you will start to see more value being delivered, and the business will start to grow. Customer attrition is a thing of the past, potentially, and being able to respond quickly to attract more customers and build into more markets and innovate becomes a much more exciting proposition. So I'll just end by saying, in a nutshell, technology teams knowing their customers helps the successful growth of a business. And this is for companies that are really looking to grow in the digital space. So they build with products, with empathy, and instead of thinking about the what or the how, you're thinking about who and why we're building these solutions. It builds trust in an organization, helps with the relationship building side of things, and you will see improvement in customer satisfaction and loyalty. And we've certainly seen that in that our customers stick with us because we've built those strong relationships with them, and essentially adopting new ways of thinking about value and working with the right processes and practices. So thank you very much.